concerned. They threatened to dump $750 billion of treasury bills to try to disrupt our economy, to try to blackmail us into not letting that information out, and to try to blackmail us into not allowing the families of the victims to sue Saudi Arabia if they have any involvement in that. So they've kept this very secret, and yet we have John Brennan coming in and saying, don't worry, I'm sure they'll not find anything there. Maybe he will help to explain that away. You know, it was last August, that we had some articles questioning whether or not John Brennan was a Muslim convert. In this article from the D.C. Clothesline, they point out that in September of 2014, a whistleblower named Greg Ford of the 223rd Military Intelligence Battalion claimed that Brennan, as chief of the CIA in Jeddah, overrode concerns and ordered the visas of the 19 so-called plane hijackers to be stamped. He said he was the person who did it. Now, also, Wayne Madsen, our reporter, has pointed out when he took his oath, he said it looks like maybe he had a problem, that this guy is no longer Catholic. Said he refused to take an oath on the Bible. He took it on the U.S. Constitution. He says he's the highest-ranking U.S. official to ever have visited Mecca, a privilege reserved only for pious Muslims. And finally, he says as National Security Council and at the CIA, he has forbidden the use of the term jihadist, just like Imam Obama. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Our reporter Joe Biggs speaks to survivors in Orlando. Our INFOWARS reporter Joe Biggs is on location in Orlando. He's talking to survivors and to the family and friends of survivors. Many of them have told him they believed that there were multiple shooters in the event. But the Orlando Police Department was quick to move to try to dispel rumors of multiple shooters. According to Orlando Channel 10, they reported talking to the police, and here's a tweet. They say rumors of multiple shooters are unfounded. The one shooter, Omar Mateen, is dead. That's the Orlando police. There you go. They're not going to look at anything other than a lone shooter. Isn't it interesting? It's always a lone wolf shooter. They never have any help. Nobody's ever holding a door closed. There's never another shooter, even though there's usually reports of multiple shooters. Now we have reports from Joe Biggs. I want to go to this one interview he's got multiple interviews on YouTube, but this particular fellow made a very good point, made a lot of good points, but he said, look, if you take away the guns, this guy had bombs. They're going to have bombs. They're going to set fires, whatever they need to do. They're suicide terrorists. Here's that report.
Joe Biggs here with INFOWARS.com. Now I'm joined today with
Chris Enzo.
Chris Enzo. So you actually had a friend who was in the club that night when it happened, early Sunday morning, late Saturday evening, however you look at it, and he was injured. And you said you're familiar with this area and what goes on here. Tell me what you've heard from someone who was actually there, what you guys know so far.
Well, what Rodney, who's my friend who was a bartender that got shot 3 times, said in his own words is that when he was there, he specifically witnessed the assailant coming in. He saw that this guy, he didn't think he was going to be a threat. He just saw him coming in. So then moments after that, pulls out a rifle with semi-automatic capabilities, and it was shooting, big caliber bullets. As soon as that happens, he literally hears the sound of bullets hitting people's skin, bullets piercing flesh, bullets breaking bones, people screaming, people crying, people in pandemonium. The other guy said that there was bodies dropping everywhere, and that the thing with Rodney said that was so crazy to him is that the person that he was serving in front of him, the person he was bartending with, died in front of him right before he got shot 3 times, and then the force of those bullets caused him to fall to the floor. And when he fell to the floor, that's when he was had to come to terms with the hardest decision of his life, whether or not he was going to live or die. And 2, he was really waiting for a ceasefire, but he says not only was there never a ceasefire, the thing that no one has really addressed yet is that he is convinced, and he is a smart guy, he really is a smart guy, that there was more than one assailant in that shooting. He believes that he heard 2 semi-automatic guns going off at the same time, and one of the shooters was obviously, the main shooter, the one that we're talking about, very calculated. All the 102 or 103 people that were hit, there was no mistakes. There was, from what I understand, there's no bullets that missed. There's bullets just hitting people. This was premeditated, well calculated, and extremely thought out from someone who's very skilled at hitting moving targets.
Yeah, what we heard from multiple sources thus far, there was a ABC report. This guy was talking on the phone saying that someone was holding the door shut,
Right.
that they heard multiple gunfire as well. And that's the word on the street, that there could have been multiple terrorists in there involved in this. But yet the mainstream media keeps saying it's just this one guy, that's it. It was kind of like a random thing. The guy went in there because he'd seen two guys in Miami make out and it upset him. And now that his father's come out and made videos,
Right.
you know, condoning violence against homosexuals, things like that. So, I mean, like,
There are some things that are not being addressed in the main media right now. That is one. The assailants had bombs on their chest, right? That's something that we keep skipping over, and that's something that I think we need to be very well aware of, because even if gun laws were out and people couldn't have gun laws and all this stuff, I feel like this guy would have set the place on fire. I feel like this guy would have built a bigger bomb. This guy would have found a way to commit destruction. Number two, it really feels like some sleeper cell is happening, since we just had this other girl get killed in the exact same
right down the road.
weird phenomenon in the same area. It almost feels like these people were tasked with coming out to Orlando to commit chaos and murder and kill people. And you know, between the multiple assailants, maybe someone holding the door, the bomb, and then the fact that not too long ago there was a shooting right here. Girl Christina Grimmie got shot in like the same manner. A person came from St. Pete or Port St. Lucie or one of them. This guy drove out here, killed her, shot her in the head, then killed himself. Then this guy knew that he was gonna die doing this. So this is an act of terror in the highest form of committing terrorism, as far as a 1 or 2 man army can commit.
That's just amazing when you sit here and think about that, you know. And how's your friend doing right now?
Unfortunately, when I spoke to him yesterday, we were in high hopes that he'd be having a good surgery, but at the moment I just got word that his surgery is undergoing some complications, because what I said earlier in the interview is that they did not do a frag check on him, which means they did not check his body for fragments, because they just do not have the staff at Orlando Regional to go through and do everything that is needed to do for every single patient. But that complication of the fragment that he has in his body may be a small thing, and he may be on his way to a very good recovery. Rodney himself is a strong-willed person. He's a little bit older than me. He's got a girlfriend, daughter, you know, he's 2 kids. He's been a model. He's a really big guy, really kind, loving guy. I know people think this was an act of hate, but I myself am straight. I'm a hetero, and so is Rodney. But Rodney and myself and everyone else here in Orlando does support the LGBT community. Everyone is okay with them and what they're doing, and nobody wants to commit hateful crimes against people that are not doing anything to warrant being murdered in the highest form of terrorist attack that we've seen since 9/11.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. People keep saying that this is, like you said, an act of hate. President Obama even came out and said this is an act of hate. And what that does, that takes focus off of the fact of what it really is. The fact that we have a commander-in-chief or president who won't even say radical Islam. These guys go around in Syria, Iraq, all over, and they go and throw homosexuals off bridges. These guys, it's an ideology thing. These guys are radical. And why can't we ever call it what it is? Why has it become a race thing or a hate thing? No, this was an attack on American soil by a terrorist organization meant to do harm to Americans. Because like you said, those are Americans just like me and you. We might not be gay like them. We might have different views, but we still, at the end of the day, we love one another and we want the best for people.
We do. I think an average person who grew up here in America is not going to grow up a hateful person. The average person is going to grow up with a mutual, decent respect for other people. So when you really try to categorize this, if you try to put this in a box, if you try to say it was a hate crime, it was this crime, yeah, Islamic radicalism and all that, but at the end of the day, what I'm dealing with is the fact that I have to figure out who I know that was murdered and what funerals I'm attending this week, because there is a very, very high chance that I do know some of the people whose names have not yet been released.
Well, man, I'm sorry for what you had to go through, brother, man. That's horrible. You know, no one ever thinks it's going to come here. I mean, what are your viewpoints on the fact that a lot of the mainstream media is coming out and they're calling for more gun control, things like that? What are your thoughts on that? Do you think we should have a more well-armed populace to make these kind of areas not a soft target,
Right.
i.e. as in having armed security to, take out a threat like that in case something happens?
Right. Well, my personal opinion on that is something that is stimulating and kind of kicking up the fear that they want us to feel right now. And one message that I'm very serious about promoting is that me and every other citizen in Orlando, we're not going to live in fear. We are not going to let terrorists think that they can cause us fear. We know that we've been attacked. We do want security to be beefed up. I'm actually going to have a show. We're actually putting on, before this happened, we were going to put on a EDM show, electronic dance music, and we were going to, now that I've had a phone call with everyone that's going to do that production, we're going to have a big moment of silence, and I want every last single citizen to know that we're going to be stronger. We've already donated, over 5,000 people have already donated blood. We are going to band together. We are not going to give into terrorism. We are going to be stronger because of this. And as far as securing us with guns and all that stuff, just keep these people protected is all I have to say. I mean, whatever method, whatever money goes into that, however you do that, as long as we're out here being how we were before, promoting the love, peace, and harmony that we have and making sure that these kind of things don't happen, I really don't know where to categorize some type of homicidal maniac and what he's going to do. I just don't know how to do that.
Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to me, man. It means a lot. And like I said, I'm sorry for what you're going through. Hopefully your buddy makes it through, and hopefully you don't have to hear any of the names of people that you do know. But if you do, man, I wish you all the best, and stay strong and, stay in there.
Absolutely.
This has been Joe Biggs with INFOWARS.com.
Well, immediately following the Orlando terrorist attack, liberals were quick to blame guns and the National Rifle Association, not the killer and not Islamic terrorism. And indeed, Obama and Hillary Clinton immediately politicized this event, calling for further gun control while completely ignoring the elephant in the room. Hillary Clinton says, "We know the gunman used a weapon of war to shoot down at least 50 innocent Americans. And, we won't even be able to get the Congress to prevent terrorists or people on the no-fly list from buying guns." So we can already tell that outlawing firearms is going to be central to her campaign following this attack. But here's a little tidbit of information for you, Hillary Clinton. Omar Mateen wasn't on a no-fly list. In fact, he worked for a company that was contracted to the Department of Homeland Security, the U.S. Army, and federal and local law enforcement. So they can't even vet the people who are in their midst. And also, as Kurt Nimmo points out, Omar used an AR-15, which isn't considered to be a weapon of war because it's not fully automatic. So once again, she comes off as an idiot and ill-informed. But this is actually a headline from Think Progress. This came out today. This is the gun that committed the deadliest shooting in U.S. history. Yes, it's the gun that committed this massacre, not the killer, not religious intolerance, not radical beliefs, but an inanimate object. And so this is what they're really heavily pushing everyone. It's this gun that did it, not radical Islam. The Washington Post is now coming after Donald Trump, attacking him in a myriad of ways. But one of the headlines that stood out to me today was they said, Donald Trump's obsession with the phrase radical Islam won't defeat terrorism. Well, at least he isn't afraid to call it out, because your obsession with gun control isn't going to stop terrorism, and neither will covering your ears and closing your eyes and not daring to utter those words because you don't want to be offensive. And indeed, it's this not wanting to offend people that once again allowed another terror attack to take place. Hillary Clinton's State Department actually blocked an investigation into the Orlando killer's mosque. This was the Fort Pierce Islamic Center where Mateen worshipped several times a week. It was under investigation by both the FBI and DHS as early as 2011 for ties to a worldwide Islamic movement that was linked to several terrorist organizations. But the investigation was shut down under pressure from the Clinton-ran State Department, as well as the DHS's Civil Rights and Civil Liberties Office, out of fear of offending Muslims. And this is according to a recently retired DHS agent, Philip Haney. He said that this was shut down because it unfairly singled out Muslims. And indeed, that's exactly what Mateen's coworker said as well. He actually said he quit because this man's behavior was so unhinged, and he was reporting Omar Mateen to his higher-ups, but they refused to do anything about it. They ignored because of political correctness. The bosses were too afraid. They refused to act out on what this coworker was saying. He was actually talking about killing people, and the bosses refused to act on it because he was a Muslim. So once again, just like in San Bernardino, we're seeing political correctness